I am super excited to be here today to present Invisible Professional to Influential Leader. That's something that is near and dear to my heart based on some experiences I went through in my corporate career. So let's jump in and get started. And by the way, this is interactive. So I am going to be asking you all to drop information in the chat, and let me make sure I get my chat up here so I can see. And I'm going to be asking you to come off mute if you feel comfortable in sharing. So let's get started. So the first question that I have for you all is, have you ever felt invisible in the workplace? And let's take it a step further. Have you just felt invisible in general? It doesn't have to be in the workplace. Drop in the chat, yes, if you've ever felt invisible, either in the workplace, in your community, at home, wherever it may be. And I'm going to raise my hand because I have also felt invisible. And so if you have answered yes, and I see all the absolutelys, the yes and the yeps coming in up in the chat, if you have answered yes to that question, you are not alone. As women leaders, I have heard so many stories about women feeling invisible in the workplace. And it resonated with me because I went through my own experience of feeling invisible. So even though, and thank you, Madam Toastmaster, for the great introduction, even though I am a Chief Human Resource Officer for a technology company, the president of my own coaching business, Positively in Pursuit, even though I've been in HR for over 25 years, even though I am an author and a bestseller selling author, even though I am all of those things, I am also the same person that felt invisible in the workplace. And I'm going to share my story of the way this showed up for me because it shows up differently for everyone. For me, it showed up in meetings. I would be in meetings and I started exhibiting this behavior where I look like the woman in this picture in meetings. And I had reached the vice president level in my career. So this wasn't something that happened to me early in my career. I was the vice president of human resources for a division in a large company. And I started all of a sudden exhibiting this behavior where I showed up in meetings and I sat there quiet. And the meeting was happening all around me. Now, I was having the meeting, but I was just having the meeting in my head. I was engaging, I was answering questions. All of that was going on in my head, and nothing was coming out of my mouth. And it was like an outer body experience. And so I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm quiet. Well, guess what happened? When you show up meeting after meeting, exhibiting that kind of behavior, my colleagues in the room, they started to ignore me. Because from their perspective, they were like, well, why is she here? She has nothing of value to add. She's not contributing. So why is she here? So they started to ignore me, which made me feel even more invisible. And then I would leave these meetings and I would beat myself up because I'm like, Lisa, you had a lot to contribute. You have value to add. Why are you not speaking up in these meetings? So that was my experience of feeling invisible. And it was very specific in how it showed up for me. And so, what I like to do today is go over 3 tips and a bonus tip for making that from transforming from being invisible to an influential leader. And I will share at the end of my presentation kind of what happened to me that really made me shift my behavior. So let's get started. And so I, again, am going to have you all kind of, throw out in the chat all kinds of information. And again, I hope you will feel comfortable in coming off of mute if you would like to share. So the first tip is know your values and get clear. Now, the tip here is even more specific. It's not only know your values, because we all live by a series of values. What I'm asking you to do in this tip is to get clarity on your top 5 values. Now, this is not an easy exercise to go through. If you can get clarity on your top 5 values, and when I say top values, these are the values that are so strong for you that if anything was to happen to that value, you're not in a good place or space. So I will share one of my top 5 values. And I did not have clarity on this when I was showing up invisible in meetings. One of my top 5 values is connection. Connection with other people. Now, I'm sitting in meetings, quiet. I'm not connecting with anyone in the room. I'm connected to the voices in my head. And so at the time, I was very uncomfortable. I didn't know why I was uncomfortable. I couldn't put my finger on why I was uncomfortable in these meetings, but I just knew I was uncomfortable. Well, guess what? I was not honoring one of my top 5 values. As a matter of fact, I was violating the value, sitting in meetings, not connecting with anyone in the room. So if you can get that clarity on your top 5 values, and if you can narrow it down to top 3, that's even more beautiful. But if you can get clarity on your top 5 values and have that values-driven mindset, that's where you stay true to you as the authenticity. That's how you become authentic. Because even though you and I may have the same values, it shows up different for us based on our experiences, based on how we grew up, based on what we've been through in life, right? So having that clarity will drive your behavior. It will drive how you respond to people, and it will drive how you respond to situations. If you do not have clarity on your top 5 values, you look like the kitten in this video. You're waving in the wind. Too many choices. You're over here, you're over there, you're everywhere. If you can center yourself in those top 5 values, it will help you with moving forward. And once I got clarity that I was violating one of my top values, like once I realized that connection was one of my top values, I started playing the movie back in my head. Like, oh my goodness. So wonder I was uncomfortable in that situation. No wonder I responded the way that I did in this situation, because I did not have that clarity. Now, when we talk about values, there's a whole list of values. So this list is not all inclusive, but I wanted to just give some examples of values. And we're getting ready to sort of jump into our first interaction here. So my question to you, because in the book, Invisible Professional to Influential Leader, there's an action and a reflection with each tip. Now, we can't go through the reflection because for sake of time. So I would like to know, and if you could drop it in the chat, list one of your top values. If you have clarity, list one of your top values, drop it in the chat. And again, this is a value that is very strong for you. So if anything was to honor or violate it, you're not, well, if anything was to violate it, you're not okay. Okay, Lisette said trust. Thank you, Danielle. Integrity. So if anything rubs up against integrity or trust, you're not in the good, you're not good. Okay, respect. Yes, thank you, Shatira. Respect. So would anyone be willing to come off of mute and just tell me about your top value that you just kind of dropped in here? And AJ has her hand up, and I hope I can see everyone. AJ, can you talk about your top value? And if anything was to violate that, how does it show up for you?
I'm sorry, I actually had a question for you.
Oh,
That I had
sure.
my hand up before you had asked that question. Yeah, you had mentioned connection was, you realized connection was, now I just wanted to clarify, was it that at that meeting you didn't feel connected in that meeting? Is that why you didn't speak? Or is that you just didn't understand at that meeting it was important you to connect and speak? Or you just
Yes.
didn't feel connected to the people there or the purpose there?
Yes. So I both. So I was not connecting with anyone in the room, but I was connected as far as the topic was concerned, like whatever the meeting was about. But I was coming in those rooms or in those meetings, and I was sitting in there not speaking or connecting with colleagues. And so that did not make me comfortable in sharing my perspective on whatever the topic was that we were dealing with. So yeah, so that's how it showed up for me, particularly.
So once you knew that your top five value was connection, in that same meeting room, would you have stayed there and then, you know, perform differently or
Oh,
had a different?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If I at that time was connecting with everybody in the room, I would have absolutely showed up. I would have been connecting with the people who are making points, all of that. But yeah, it was a weird time for me. And look, I never had that in my career. You know, I had made it to the vice president level, and we can get into imposter syndrome. That was showing up for me. I started questioning whether I belonged in the room. So, right, when you peel back the onion on that, right, there's more. So I hope that answered your question, AJ.
Yeah, it sounds like it's so important. It's like, okay, sometimes, we think we know, but until we really do this work, we're not really clear as exactly what's the most important. And then once you decide that one or two or three or five things are the most important, and then that's what you act on. That's what you just is, because sometimes, like with me, I just still need to work on this, because with me I can have too many, you know, ideas or things like that. But I see what you're saying, the value in really honing that down. Thank you.
Right. Absolutely. And when you don't have clarity, you're not sure, right? Like I wasn't sure what was going on. I just knew that this behavior was new and different for me. So, but thank you, AJ, for asking that question and coming off of mute. Because I want to, because anybody who's struggling with that, I always encourage you, take a look at your values. And again, not all the values. What's driving? What's your strong values? Okay. So let's keep going to the next tip. So, tip number two. So, tip number two, build credibility, do your homework, and know your craft. That's tip number two. Now, I have a few questions to throw out there. And again, you don't have to drop it in the chat, but I just want you all to think about this. So here are a couple questions. So what is your expertise? What is your zone of genius? What are you known for? How do you build credibility? First, you must decide what you want to be known for. A lot of times we build credibility and it sort of just happens instead of us being strategic and intentional about what we like to build credibility around. And I like to just share a couple things, especially when I work with other women. Sometimes we discount the things that come very natural to us. So, for example, you might be an excellent writer, beautiful writer. It comes so natural to you. And because it's so easy and so natural, you sort of like, oh, that's okay. Okay. You know, where in actuality, that's your superpower. Everybody's not a great writer. Everyone's not an excellent writer, right? So, but we tend to discount it. Another area, dependability. You may be known in your organization for knowing how to get things done, knowing how to, what I call, you have all the relationships in the company. People come to you, they trust you, and it's easy. It's very easy, it's very natural. And you would discount it because you're like, oh, that's nothing. But guess what? Everybody don't have that. People don't trust everybody. And because it comes so easy to you, we discount it. When in actuality, that's your superpower. Why not build credibility around that? Right? But also, we are all in our professions, right? And our technical disciplines. So, absolutely, we're going to build credibility within our own profession. And so, I'll share another personal story. I decided earlier in my career, I wanted to build credibility around employee relations issues because I'm in HR. So it was an area that I had an interest in. It was an area that I was like, wow, I want to learn more about it. Well, I made that decision. I want to get good with complex ER issues. And so guess what happened? The law of attraction. I started attracting the most craziest employee relations issues at the point where I was like, what is going on right now? All the ER stuff started attracting to me. And so, but it gave me experience. I was able to put, as I was doing investigations, complex situations, I was putting knowledge right in my toolkit. And those things made me get better and better and better. And eventually the word got out. I had divisions across the company reaching out to me and saying, Lisa, we have a crazy investigation that we need to do. Can you come out of your division and come over here and be a part of the investigation team? Great. Yes. Wouldn't turn it down because I'm trying to get more experience to put in my knowledge toolkit. So, what are you adding to your knowledge toolkit to get better and build credibility around the thing that you want to build credibility around? I love this quote. Your reputation and your integrity are everything. Follow through on what you say you're going to do. Your credibility can only be built over time, and it is built from the history of your words and your actions. I love this quote by Maria Zen. Love it. Because guess what? Words and actions matter, right? They have to align. You can't come to me and say, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And when I look at the situation, you are riding a motorbike on a wave. The words and the actions are not aligning for me. So, no, I'm not going to trust you. Right. So, when we look at credibility, again, more ways to build your credibility. I love it because guess what? You all are building credibility today, being on this call, being a member of Toastmasters. You talking about building credibility? You're building credibility and honing and getting better. You're practicing, you're putting all that in your toolkit to get ready for public speaking, right? But here's other ways, continuing ads, certs in your discipline. Here, we're talking about mentoring. How about getting a mentor to work with you on a specific thing? Instead of asking the mentor to mentor you on all the things, you say to the person, I want you to mentor me on this. I had that. I had a person that I asked, can you mentor me on executive presence? Because she was a beast. She could command a room without even opening her mouth. And I watched that in action and how she showed up. So when I went to her to ask her, I asked her to mentor me on that. Forget all the other stuff. She was in HR too. I can get somebody else to help me with the other HR stuff. But this is what I'm asking for. Of course, picking up those stretch projects is another area. Joining again your networking groups, your local chapters of your professional organizations, and volunteering. Volunteering is a big one. Again, you're trying to get more experience in order to build that credibility. So, yes, absolutely volunteering. So, here's the action. Other than being on today's Toastmaster call, what activities are you doing to master your craft? And whatever your craft is, drop it in the chat, just one thing. What are you doing to help you get good or get better at whatever you're building credibility around? Anyone? Or if you're comfortable coming off of mute, I would love to hear. If you're
Yeah, it may be easier to come off mute. It would take forever.
okay.
Hi, this is Lauren. I, I would say some of the things that I'm doing to make sure I master my craft are one, surrounding myself with people who have done or are doing the thing that I want to do or am currently doing. So building
Yes.
community and tribe is so essential. That's one of the things I've learned. The other thing I'm doing is taking opportunities that are intentional. So not simply saying yes to everything, but understanding why do I want to do this particular thing and how is it going to benefit me and the craft. And then the other thing I'm doing is because of my personality is learning how to step back and take a break and not
Yes.
think about the craft in the midst of taking the break. Having actual rest. And those ideas have come from, again, the community that I am in now. So I think those things are beneficial. And my craft is writing, editing, and soon to be professional speaking.
Oh, wow. Lauren, thank you. Thank you for sharing. You put so many juicy nuggets in what you just said, because what I just heard also is you're prioritizing some self-care in that. So I love that, because as women, sometimes we don't put the self-care in there as well. So thank you so much for sharing. And again, it's really about getting strategic and intentional about what we're doing instead of kind of falling in and kind of, wavering. No, you decide what you want to get good and what you want to build that credibility around, and then you get intentional. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
let's move to tip number 3. So once you have built that credibility, whatever area you've decided that you're building credibility around, you have to find a way to become an influencer, and an influence in your organization, influencer in your, church community, your local club, whatever it is. Now, what do I mean by influencer? What I mean by that is this is where your voice is heard. This is where your opinion is valued. This is when you are welcomed into the the leadership table, or welcomed in the room, right? So that's what I mean by influencer. Because once you got the credibility, you know your stuff, right? So now you take it to the next level and find a way to become the influencer. So here's another story that I have, a personal story. So in my career, as an HR leader, who are my customers? The employees, the managers, and anyone in the organization. So I went to a new company, and I'm coming in and I'm trying to assimilate into the culture. A lot of the managers were like, oh, Lisa, she's the new lady, the new HR lady. So they were inviting me to their staff meetings, just so I can learn. Well, guess what? I had one manager that refused to invite me to his meetings. And I would walk by the conference room and see him in there meeting with his people. And I'm looking like, well, why didn't I get an invite to come into the meeting? And it's hard not to take that stuff personal, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to have to do my thing, with him. The other managers were very welcoming, inviting me in. Okay, I'm going to have to do something different with him. So I started just doing my thing, working with him, coming up with recommendations, helping him solve business problems, solutions. And finally, we started building a relationship. He started, trusting me. And finally, I got the invitation to the meeting. But once that relationship became solid, I had to ask him. I asked him, I said, hey, why early on or initially you would not invite me to your meetings? And he was honest, and I appreciated his honesty. He said to me, Lisa, the reason why I did not invite you to my meetings is because I thought that everything that I wanted to do, you were going to say no. My mind was blown. I said, you didn't even know me. Mind blown. So, but the lesson learned for me was, guess what? He had a perception about HR that had nothing to do with me. And clearly he had an experience with HR that had nothing to do with me. And you're absolutely right, Kathy. But with him, I wasn't getting the invitation to his meeting. I had to build a relationship with him first before he would invite me into the meeting. So all of this to say is your title doesn't mean anything. Some leaders were like, oh, she's the new HR person. Come on in. But with him, he was like, I don't care if she's the new HR lady. I need to know who I'm dealing with. So again, really understanding that, because guess what? I want to be invited into the meeting versus me trying to kick the door down to get in the meeting, right? But if you're an influencer, you have to show why they should invite you into the meeting or why they should listen to you. So what are you bringing to the table? I love this video with Gabrielle and Jessica Alba, Gabrielle Union. And Jessica Alba is telling her, I want you to want to invite me, right? I don't want you to invite me just because, oh, okay, she needs to be. I want you to want to invite me in, right? So when we look at the action around this, what is one area of your expertise or your discipline, one area that you could use to become an influencer? Think about that. This one area. And instead of dropping it in the chat, if anyone would like to come off of mute, is there any area, or maybe there's an area that you are already an influencer? And share that with the group. And someone said I could volunteer and call on someone. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Anyone would be willing to share? Is there any area of your expertise or your discipline that you could use to become an influencer? Terry said, I like to think I'm an influencer. Oh, great. With emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Great. Thank you, Terry, for sharing that. I love that. Yeah. So how she is really on the front edge of really taking what her knowledge and her credibility and outpouring that into being an influencer in that specific area. So thank you, Terry, for sharing that. Anyone else, when you think about, have you looked at what your expertise or your discipline and trying to figure out, like, how do I become an influencer in that area? So again, I'm leaving the questions because I really would love for you to focus on that, because that will help you move your credibility to that next level. And Lisette said, informed decision-making in medicine. Lisette, I love that. Thank you for sharing. So you're building influence, you're going to become an influencer around decision-making and informing folks in that field. Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And let me make sure I didn't miss anyone. Yes, yes. Okay. So now we're at the last tip, which is a bonus tip. Establish your leadership brand. You are your brand. Now, here's the thing. I work with women leaders. I work with women who are SMEs, subject matter experts. And I had an SME say to me one day, Lisa, I don't need no brand. I don't have, I'm not a people leader. I don't have direct reports. And my eyes got big. I said, oh no. You have a brand, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not. You have a brand, and you don't need people. You don't need to be a people leader to have a brand. So my question to her, and here's my question to you all, what are they saying about you when you're not in the room? Because that's your brand. It's called brand awareness. Now, guess what? When I start showing up in meetings quiet and feeling invisible, I knew that was something that was going to be against my brand. My brand took a hit. It took a big hit, and I knew it. And I knew I had to rebuild my brand because of that, right? So Lauren said, hopefully they are saying nice things. Yes, and look, for anyone that you trust, you got to have the relationship, right? If you trust someone, why not ask? And, if you have that relationship and this is someone that is a mentor or a sponsor for you in the organization, absolutely you want to ask, because they may be in rooms that you are not in. So you absolutely want to ask, look, what are they saying about me when I'm not in the room? That's called brand awareness. Absolutely. And so now I'm going to share how I sort of transition from showing up invisible in the meetings. Now, for me, that I actually had a little bit of a spiritual moment after I left a meeting where I had just sat quiet. And as I'm walking back to my office, a voice in my ear was like, it is not a mistake. And I was like, what? Well, what happened, the meeting I had just left out of, we had just made a business decision to shut down one of our product lines. That business decision was going to impact 100 employees and their families. As the top HR leader in that room, how dare I sit in that meeting quiet? So I'm walking out of that meeting and I'm going back to my office, and the voice said, it is not a mistake. And I went to my office, closed the door, I was like, whoa. And the voice said, it is not a mistake. You're in that room. Take care of my people. And I had to sit down and say, whoa. I had to reconnect with my why. Lisa, why are you here? Why are you in human resources? Why did you pick the field that you picked? You picked that field because you want to help people. So how dare, almost like a rebuking, how dare you sit in a meeting where 100 employees and their families are about to be impacted and lose their jobs, and you're the top HR leader in that room, you better wake up. And I was never the same. The next meeting, I showed up. I was a different Lisa Anderson. My colleagues had that look on their face like, who is this? Yeah, I'm here. So let's get down to business. And here's the agenda. So that was my experience of shifting. It took that for me to shift out of that behavior, right? With this group that I was the VP of HR for, right? I'm part of this leadership team. So yes, I had to build the relationships, all of that, right? But that's what it took for me to make that shift. And it's going to be different for you. I strongly encourage you to reconnect with your why. Okay. So in closing, we went through 3 tips and a bonus tip. So what I would like to know is which one of these tips resonate with you the most, and which one, number one, which one of these tips resonate with you in the sense that you know that you need to get more strategic or more intentional about working on this tip. And you can drop 1, 2, 3, or bonus in the chat. So Denise, thank you, Denise. Number 1, about values. Okay. Lisette said the bonus. Okay. So working on your brand. Oh, wait a minute, they're going by. All of them. Anne Marie, sounds like you showed up different. Yes, AJ, and was accepted as such. Yes. All of them. Dawn said number 2, building credibility. Okay. Shatira 1. Okay, a lot of values. Number 3, Daniela said number 3 and the bonus. Okay, so I am going to leave a few free resources if you're interested. And let me pull it up here. So I have values for those who said number 1, values. I have a values exercise that will help you narrow down those values and get clear or get some clarity around your top 5 values. I always start with 5. And then if you can narrow it down to 3, that's golden, but 5 is really good. I also have on this website, bit.ly freebies trio 1, a career roadmap. So if you are looking to assess kind of where your strengths are and what your next position is, what's your next move, all of that, there's a careers roadmap. And for those of you that said bonus, the leadership check brand. So there's a leadership brand checklist on there. So you can kind of look through and say, oh, I got this, I'm checking this. Oh, I might not have this check. And this is an area that you might want to be like, oh, I never thought of this, right? So there's a leadership brand checklist. So in full transparency, you can, you have to enter your email address. You will join my email list. I have a monthly newsletter that comes out every month. I do not sell email addresses or share them because I don't like mine to be shared. So you don't have to worry about that. But only if you're interested, those are free. And you only have to enter your email address 1 time to get all 3 of the freebies. Okay. And thank you so much for participating. I am, all my contact information is here, the way you can get in touch with me. I am on LinkedIn 2 ways. As Lisa Anderson with all the HR certs behind my name. I am the CHRO of my technology company, but I also have a Positively in Pursuit LinkedIn page where I do post all of my coaching information. And then of course I'm on IG and Facebook.